All right, let's get it started. Um, Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are on the planet. Before getting started, let me welcome my guest and co-speaker today, Christian Lucci. Christian, are you in?
I'm in. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good, good, good. So this is our second webinar in a row in the last 15 days. And the goal of today, it's really to present and detail a bit on what we do on the identity governance front. So at Sharelock, we provide behavioral analytics insights with an identity-centric approach. And we have two legs of offering. One is more threat detection, which helps a lot into the IGA space. But the other one is, I would say, purely into the IGA domain of helping IGA platforms to get better. So we gave this title to Rejuvenate Identity Governance with Identity-centric Behavioral Analytics. And it's going to be a few charts and a nice demo run by Christian. Let's get it started, assuming that my computer moves on. All right, so the company overview, for those of you who don't know us, we're a small and nice startup established in 2017, privately funded, headquartered in the beautiful city of Rome, and most of us are coming from a previous company called Cross Ideas, a company that was acquired by IBM. So all of our roots are sitting in this cybersecurity and identity governance domain. And we added to the team some relevant machine learning guys. So that's what contributed to create our, not just the platform per se, but also the patent that we obtained on the platform, I would say just recently. It was, I think, in May this year, which is quite relevant for a company of our size and age. So what is happening in the market of cybersecurity, there is a shift today. It hasn't started today, but it didn't start too long ago. And the shift is from detecting indicators of compromise to indicators of behaviors. In a nutshell, the way I represent is today on the left, a bunch of security threats are detected based on the footprint. So you don't see the eyes, you don't see the face, you don't see the tie, you don't see the suitcase, you just see the footprint. The shift now is understanding the behavior and the identity behind that behavior, because that's the only sustainable way forward, also given the recent complexity of the disappearance of a perimeter of any company. When it moves all these concepts to IGA, we say, IGA, you should behave. And if you look at what IGA platforms are describing, it's a should-be state, okay? There is a man in the middle, and he has some peers, okay? Based on same role, same attributes, same organizational unit. Their reality, oftentimes, it's this guy is behaving quite differently compared to the should be. So the as is, it's rather different compared to the should be. And this gap is not a threat by per se, but it's for sure it's a compliance gap. And we aim to provide insights and recommendation to help close these gaps, comparing the should be state versus the behavioral analysis that we provide. So what we do in a nutshell is application security. And if you look at a bunch of companies in the market, most of the companies, especially the large one, have implemented CM platforms on security infrastructure. And what these platforms are really doing, they detect footprints, okay? They have no identity concept whatsoever behind them or beneath them. So what we do, it's, of course, we can take log from any file, but we really apply to the business application domain where there are people using very sensitive data that we call crown jewels. So on these log files, we do three things. We collect them, we learn and define behavioral baselines for each user. And based on these baselines, more than one, eventually enriched by identity injection coming from IGA platform, we detect anomalies. Some of these anomalies are rolling up to threats. Some of these anomalies are just rolling up to compliance alerts. Just for the clarity of explanation, this integration with any IGA platform, it's not the value we provide. That's an obvious integration that we can do. The value, it's really closing the gap. So if you look a bit more into what type of anomaly detection, as I just said very briefly, 2 domain, same product, same algorithm, same infrastructure, just 2 different use cases and 2 different part of the UIs. One is the threat detection piece. So detecting threats based on behavior, it's an important signal that we signal back to IGA platform. On the right side, it's a compliance alert. We signal a significant gap that should be, if not closed, it should be remediated. Now, behind or beneath our entire infrastructure, there is a basic component, which is not that basic, of course, because we get the patent based on that idea, of the indicator of behavior. So the indicator of behavior, it's built on a triplet of ingredients. The first one is the machine learning model that you use for detecting a given behavior, and I'll be more specific. The other one is the data set where you want to detect behaviors. Could be Microsoft Dynamics, SAP, Office 365, a VPN, any log file. And the log field is a given field within the log file where you want to define a baseline. Could be the transaction field within an SAP log file. And so this is the component for detecting anomalies. So an indicator of behavior detects anomalies. These indicator of behavior has some key benefits compared to the competition. And I named Securonics, Exabeam, Gurukul, these guys. So first of all, we can build unlimited indicators on the same data set. So on the same Office 365 or SAP, you can build more user baseline with multiple IOBs. The second important thing to highlight is we define behavioral baselines for each user. Some of our friends in the market, they require you to have at least 1,000 employees in the company because below that threshold, the baselines are too generic and they generate too many false positives. And last but not least, you don't need any machine learning expertise to use the tool. And oftentimes you see tools where you need to get into the nitty-gritty of reconfiguring the parameter of a machine learning model. We call all of this, we took inspiration from this Agatha Christie say, which is 1 coincidence is just a coincidence, 3 coincidences are a proof. So in order to improve the accuracy of any of our models, you need to have many indicators, many coincidences, okay, many clues. And because that's the only way to really mitigate and resolve the plague of these systems, which is typically to create too many false alarms, too many false positives. So increasing the accuracy has been key in our driving principles from our company inception. Now, how do we move from indicator of behavior to threats? Well, in a nutshell, when there are too many coincidences. So in the example of this guy, too many logins from unusual locations, too many unusual activity, an unusual attachment size to emails, an unusual transaction sequence on given application, unusual working time. So these are just examples of indicator of behaviors. You can model anything you want. But in this data exfiltration, are the classic components of, well, maybe these guys is trying to exfiltrate some relevant data, maybe on the sales side, or maybe on the M&A side of the company, given that he's still wearing a tie. Now, behind the scenes, we have machine learning models, and we want to be specific on what we do instead of being fluffy. the two domains are for anomaly detection, and the other one is identity attribute enrichment. Let me start from the left. Anomaly detection is really to detect the anomalies that are underlying the indicator of behaviors. These are a set of unsupervised models, so they don't need to prepare a training data set, and they address different needs, okay? So if you want to address an anomalous sequence of actions in SAP or any business application, you pick the anomalous patterns models. If you want to detect change of working habits, you pick one of the baseline behavioral models. So this is for the anomaly detection. And then on the right side, what we did, or we started to do, it's really try to solve one of the original sins of behavioral analysis on business applications. Some of the business applications, less and less today, I have to say, are logging account ID or identity information. They just limit themselves to IP or MAC address. So in that case, what do? We obsessively want to heuristically bind that to an identity. So we have built, and it's good part of our R&D, to enrich that log file in a way which is identity rich and hence becoming consumable, and always being able to bind an anomaly to an identity, excuse me. Now, what is this? Well, as you can tell, and this is real life, believe me, this is taken from one of our data scientists, and even the coffee spot is real. So this is the incompliance score, which is an additional interpretation of our models, so to measure this gap. You remember I said at the beginning, there is the should be state versus the as is. The incompliance score, which is a nice formula with some peer analysis, clustering, blah, blah, blah. In a nutshell, it gives, when you compute this distance for any users that are in our platform, gives for each user a score. We call it incompliance score. It goes from 0 to 100. If you're 0, you're okay, there is no gap. If there is 100, means that you are a very nasty user and you behave very differently compared to what you should be doing, described in SailPoint or IBM or Savient or One Identity, whatever. What we do then based on incompliance score, we drive recommendations to substantially add and remove things, add and remove access to this application or that application. And you're gonna see that in action. These are a few of the key concepts that I just said. So you can see the fragmentation of the entire team, but then you really go down to individual users because the incompliance is on the individual level. Because remember, the evil is always in the details. And so we go down to individual level and we actually say, or we recommend things to do. You're gonna see that in the demo. Now, what are we gonna see in the demo? In the demo, we are showing how we can help or help to improve an IGA platform according to a sequence of phases of any IGA project. So we can help during the assessment phase. The assessment phase is not something that we observe too much in the demo today, but we can really assess your past data and detect past behavioral anomalies, or even analyze your clustering insights. You know the overall modeling? Well, you can do sort of role modeling based on behaviors. But then the thing becomes to be more interesting when you start implementing. So we can help a lot in suggesting the matching for orphan accounts. You know, this reconciliation issue has always been a very relevant pain for any IGA project, and we know it by heart. And then we can help on the optimized phase. And that's more the latest part that you have seen, to remove inutilize access, but more importantly, to provide add and remove recommendation for any incompliant user. And last but not least, and that's a bit going back to our core capabilities, you can keep the platform inspecting and reacting, because as Sharelock, we provide information on which accounts should be blocked based on threats, or based on too many anomalies, maybe not a threat, we can suggest user-specific reviews, and here we can detect ghost accounts. And you know, ghost accounts are another important threat component of any identity-centric infrastructure. So you're going to see the demo run by Christian along the journey of, you know, of these capabilities, and we'll go back into this chart just to sum it up again once the demo is over. So with that, we get into the demo time. I stop sharing and I hand it over to Christian. Now he should be able, okay. All right, Christian.
Okay. Thank you, Andrea. So let's go. This is our dashboard. This is the entry point where we can find a summary of the current situation of the system. We can see here the number of alerts triggered and the real-time data that are flowing to the system. This is a static environment, so there is no data flow right now. In the central part, we can see the big numbers relating to accounts, users, and assets. The system warns us about the number of inactive accounts, ghost accounts, and orphan accounts. We find then inactive users, risky users, inactive assets. Assets means database or workstation or whatever. In the next section, we can see peer groups calculated dynamically based on real user behavior. So now the static clustering based on a single attribute such as organizational unit, location, user manager, but a clustering based on users' real behavior. Clicking on this group, for example, we can see its population, we can see users who are part of it. I want to explain now the difference between risky users and anomalous users, or more generally between risk and anomaly. The anomaly is a single signal that warns us that a given behavior is different than its baseline. And this is not necessarily a bad thing. It can be due to a normal or controlled event like corporate structuring, deployment of a new application, introduction of a new business process, and so on. The risk is instead calculated after the modeling of a threat, and it's a correlated set of anomalies that is indicating real dangerous scenario due to an attack pattern of some kind. So we can see here the top anomalous users ordered by global anomaly score. Among these, there may be users who are protagonists of some threat and users who are simply anomalous. Finally, in the lower part, we can see the summary of the alerts that the system has generated. In this case, we can see that the data exfiltration is in progress. But let's go back to orphan accounts. Orphan accounts are those accounts that are present in the identity governance system, but don't have a match among users. And therefore, it's not known who they belong to. A known and widespread problem in many companies that can be solved thanks to our functionality. At the top of the page, we can see that there is no user to whom this account is linked, a feature of orphan accounts. In the central section, we find the account activity tab, where we find the time intervals in which this account was seen by our system. We can see the working day of the account divided by hours, and that we can inspect by clicking and reading the information on the site. But it's in the last tab that I would like to focus on. This is the place where we can see the behavioral peers of this account. So not a group based on a static attribute, but a group based on the real behavior of the accounts. Here we can see who these accounts are associated with, what are the users who use the peer accounts of our orphan account, and then go back through a simple association to the owner of the account we are analyzing. Just to explain, If I'm in front of a house and I want to know who the owner is, one of the fastest and easiest things I can do is to ask to his neighbors. The chances they know who he is are very high. And here, in the same way, and in a completely automatic and transparent way, I can trace the legitimate owner of an orphan account by exploiting the information that comes to me from his behavioral peers. But let's go now to the core of our function, most closely linked to the world of compliance. We have seen our clustering algorithm in action to discover the behavioral peers of accounts. We will now use this algorithm for a functionality closer to identity governance domain, looking for any anomalies between the world of provisioning and the world of behavior. In the upper part of the view, we can see two colored bars. These bars show the user groups related to identity governance world and the user group related to real users' behavior. We can cluster from identity provisioning point of view on any static attribute such as organization, unit, manager, location. All the data are coming from identity governance system. In this case, we have clustered by application, and so in each group we find users similar for the application to which they have access. Sorry. In the first bar, we can see how many identity governance groups we found and how large they are from the population point of view. The same thing about behavioral groups. We can see how many behavioral groups we have found and how large they are. Here in the central part, we can see how many behavioral groups an identity governance group is composed. In a perfect world, and this environment is a perfect world, a group of users provisioned in the same way will behave in the same way, and so the correspondence between identity group and behavioral group will be one-to-one. Vice versa, if there is a large fragmentation, it means that something is wrong. Users are provisioning in the same way, but their behavior is split into 3, 4, 5, 6 groups, and the reason must be investigated. The same thing in the other tab, but the inverted parts. We start from behavioral group and we see its fragmentation for identity groups making the same consideration. We are talking about groups. Now we begin to talk about individual users, introducing a new concept, the compliance score, which is the measure of the distance between user assignments and his actual behavior calculated looking at its peers. So the greater is in compliance score, the more there is a difference between what he access to and what he uses because, for example, is a bad provision. But even in a perfect world, there may be a small situation to be analyzed and eventually fixed. So let's go to see Charlie with a score of 50%. We have here two columns. In the left column, we see his identity governance cluster. So there are all users similar to Charlie based on the application they can use. In the right column, instead, we see his cluster relating to his real behavior. So it's true that he can use some application, but which ones does he use? This column answers this question. Therefore, based on the comparison of these two groups and based on the differences between what should be identity governance and as is word behavior, the system automatically generates recommendation to fill this gap and give provisioning indication. We use behavioral analysis and peers analysis to add useful context and help companies to have clean governance consistent with the reality of everyday life. Let's close the loop by analyzing the alert generated by the system that we saw on the dashboard. In the current threat detail view, we have all the information available to analyze the alert generated and make the appropriate decisions. In the timeline, we can analyze the anomalous behavioral indicators triggered by the system sorted in chronological order. As we can see, the system has detected two anomalous behaviors linked to the same user, which, being correlated, led to the generation of the data exfiltration alert. We can see that Oscar Wilson's SharePoint account has been used to access the download folder a much greater number of times than its baseline. And then by analyzing the other anomalous behavior, we can see that it was done in a strange time compared to normal behavior. And all of this is detected automatically and before the actual threat, such as data theft, takes place. What can we do with this level of analysis and contextualization? Everything. We start from micro recertification based on risk of the user or of the account blocking, access removal up to integration with ticketing system or incident response services. That's all for this quick demo. And Andrea, the stage is yours again.
All right. Thank you very much, Christian. Great job. So let me go back to this chart. Can you see my screen? So basically what we try, hopefully at best, to give you is an idea that as Sharelock, we can do many things, but we're trying to put them in a context of a sequence. Let me repeat them again so that to be sure that they are well carved out in your mind. So the first one is we can help you in the assessment phase. So you can use Sharelock as a business intelligence tool, analytics tool, for analyzing what happened in the past, what happened so far. The implementation phase, I think it can greatly help in the account reconciliation with all the, in general, account reconciliation and that runtime with orphan accounts. In the optimization, it's the part that we call compliance. It's the trying to close the gap between theory and reality. And the inspect and react, it's really getting a more lively and actionable IGA platform that reacts based on actual behaviors, anomalies, and threats detected by Sharelock. And I think this is quite of an unique proposition in the market because we're really trying to bring together security and compliance with a common perspective. And there is one very simple reason on why we can do that, because we reconcile everything to an identity-centric analysis, okay? That's our core, I would say, feature set. All right, voice of the customer. I really like this one because these guys, we can't name them because they're very shy, but you know, they've seen plenty of Israeli, American, Indians, whatever, machine learning vendors. But you know, end of the day, all of the others, one day or the other, you had to change the parameter into any machine learning model. And you know, there is no company on earth and end user who has machine learning expert because they are all taken by startups. We know it. So these guys like the fact that they don't need to know machine learning or need to get into training data sets. They could use our stuff immediately. So that's a key proposition. So from a pricing standpoint and consumption, we have two delivery mechanisms. One is the on-prem, still very valid today because a lot of log files don't want to move off the boundaries. And the other one is SaaS, currently on AWS. Maybe we can test it on Azure in the coming future, but it doesn't matter much. What it matters is three things. It's a per user based pricing models, no tricks on EPS, terabytes, whatever. It's a subscription base, that's quite a standard. And another important thing is we worked quite hard and build one code base that deploys on-prem and SaaS with the same functionalities, okay? So you can start on-prem and then move SaaS with the same connector any day you like. Today, the cost of incoming log incoming flows in cloud platform are quite expensive. We all know it, but maybe one day it becomes cheaper. So you move your on-prem to a SaaS version, and it's the same software, same microservices, same Kubernetes cluster sitting underneath. Let me close up with some unique selling points, not all of them, but some of them. So first of all, the first red, number 3, is our obsession is to enrich identity-less log files. So whenever we find a log file with no identity, we want to enrich it, okay? And we spoke about this ability to heuristically add identity to it. The point number 5, it's something that I think it was nicely covered today. We do threat management and compliance management 2 in 1. Not 2 products, not 2 patch products developed at the later stage. No. Same platform, 2 UIs for the 2 type of personas using that, but behind the scene, 1. And last but not least, I want you to know that our stuff has a patent on it. And because in this space, it's good to be original, and we decided to be original, proving it with a patent that describes the way we build these user behavioral baselines. With that, the webinar is over.